On today's show, the first round in the books, the second round matchup is set. We've got series dates for the Cavs against the Indiana Pacers. Spencer Davies here to talk about it all on this edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. Joined today by Spencer Davies, Cleveland Cavaliers on SI, and a number of other places along the way as well. And thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. If this is your first time, welcome. If it's not your first time, thanks for making us your first listen every day. Proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. In today's episode, brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox, no console needed. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. Spencer, we found out the other night that the Indiana Pacers going to be second round matchup for the Cleveland Cavaliers as they beat the Milwaukee Bucks in 5 games. We've got some series dates. The series going to start Sunday in Cleveland. Game 2 will be Tuesday. Game 3 Friday in Indy. Game 4 Sunday in Indy. And then after that, the games, if necessary, Game 5 would be the following Tuesday, then the following Thursday for Game 6, and Game 7 would be May 18th right here in Cleveland for Game 7. But as we watched, the Pacers beat the Bucks in that Game 5 with an incredible comeback. I just sort of want to get started with what were your first thoughts on the Cavs taking on the Pacers, just like this matchup in a whole, and then we can kind of go anywhere based on that.
I think they're just very similar in terms of their style. And I think that it's cool just like from the naked eye watching basketball, seeing these two kind of parallel with each other. One's obviously a little bit more towards the mountaintop and have been doing it very well. But at the same time, these Pacers, they're back and they're hungry just like they had been last year in the Eastern Conference Finals. So I'm really looking forward to this one. And I think that their depth is a lot better than Miami's. I think that their offense is clearly better than Miami's. And they have a little bit more that the Cavs are going to be challenged by.
There's one, when you win a series by 122 points in 4 games, like I don't think it's some earth-shattering thing for you to say the Cavs are going to be more challenged in this series. Like, absolutely they will be. The Pacers, I really think the Pacers are a really good team. I know they finished 4th in the East by record. Like New York finished with a better record than they did. I think the Pacers are a much better team than the Knicks. Like the Pacers got off to, I think it was a 10-15 start in the first 25 games of the season. It was just not a great start coming off of what was, a really long postseason run for them last year into the conference finals. I wonder if Tyrese Haliburton being around the Olympic team all summer had something to do with him maybe not getting off to the best start this year. Obviously, he closed the season much better than he started it, which was sort of an inverse for what he did last year. But overall, I think this Pacers team is a really good one. They are obviously going to be a much more difficult challenge for the Cavs as we start to break into the series. But I do think that there are a number of areas where the Cavs should still have a significant advantage. And the one thing that I keep coming back to, because these teams played as Central Division rivals, they played 4 times in the regular season. I keep coming back to none of that matters. And I thought that what the Cavs did against Miami in the regular season mattered a little bit. But in the 4 games, game 1 was, I believe, January 12th, that the Pacers actually snapped. That was the 12-game winning streak for the Cavs that they had in the middle of the season. Indiana kind of beat the brakes off the Cavs that night. They snapped that winning streak. Cavs go to Indy a night later, 2 nights later, win in Gainbridge Fieldhouse. And then games 3 and 4 were the last week of the season, and none of the Cavs starters, except for Jarrett Allen, played in those games. So I just really don't think there's anything to take away. And sort of my takeaway from that is, well, the Pacers have not seen DeAndre Hunter in the role that DeAndre Hunter is actually in on this team. And I think that's a big deal in this series.
It should be, because he's somebody that can go out and get his own shot. He's also coming off of the bench in most of these, and the Cavs have not had that in the playoffs before. And clearly, I mean, you score 21 points on 8 shots in game 3, just incredibly efficient. The length is obviously going to be a space filler defensively, and just the overall chemistry he has with Ty Jerome. that just kind of puts two guys that are off the bench in basically starter roles for the Cavs when they mix up their lineups and they have different ways to beat you and different kind of combinations that they can go to. And I feel like that makes them really dangerous because they have really a starting 7 more than a starting 5. And yes, obviously Sam Merrill's going to play a big role. You're going to see Dean Wade out there, who had a tremendous last couple of games against Miami. Isaac Okoro's going to get minutes. So they're going to continue to pull that rotation out. But I think that top 7 is really what separates the Cavs from the rest of the pack. And I'm sure that we're going to get into the strengths and weaknesses of Indiana. And I have a couple off the top of my head too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is important to look at what Indiana does well, and they finished the year 9th in offense and 14th in defense in the regular season, which, that stuff at this point in the year, I do think needs to be taken with a grain of salt. They are a team that is going to play very fast. Like their name, the Pacers, is a bad dad joke for their playing style because they do play quick. They played quicker than the Cavs in the regular season. They were 7th in pace. The Cavs were 10th, which was a very significant jump for Cleveland from what they were the year before to what they are now. With things slowing down in the playoffs, like I do think that's an interesting thing to look at because obviously, the old adage is the playoffs, they get much slower, and they do. The Pacers played at a much slower pace in their first round series against Milwaukee than they did in the regular season, but it was still the second fastest series, only behind Memphis and OKC. And Memphis is one of the few teams in the NBA that made the playoffs playing at one of the fastest paces in the NBA, a faster pace than the Pacers, if you will. So I do think that's an interesting thing. I think the styles of these two teams are interesting. I think the Cavs have a very significant depth advantage, and I think there's a conversation to be had there. But where do you think Indiana has its most strength, I guess?
I think that they just have multiple ball handlers, kind of how the Cavs do. And you look at a guy like Andrew Nembhard, who hardly gets as much of the credit as Tyrese Haliburton, but he's a guy who's really blossomed over his last couple of years in the NBA. And I think that experience in the Eastern Conference Finals against Boston last year really helped him. And he's just kind of a guy that plays with poise. One area where Indiana is really good is that they don't turn the ball over. Now, I think that the Cavs can turn them over because the Miami Heat are usually pretty decent at not giving themselves up. But Indiana, if you double one guy, then you're going to have still somebody else that can penetrate, can kick, can get into the paint. And I think that that's something the Cavs have not seen in the playoffs this year, at least yet. So that's going to be a difference. I think that also the Cavs are going to have to be really on their P's and Q's in their defensive rotations because Indiana by far is taking the most corner threes in the playoffs. So those are some things that I think that are going to be on the game plan. I also am really intrigued by the front court matchups here. You obviously Pascal Siakam and Miles Turner, and then you have Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen. That's a really fun matchup to watch. We could go into each other's games as much as we want to, but just extremely talented 4-5 combos for both teams. Pascal is an NBA champion. Miles Turner has obviously played some of the best basketball in his career in that first series, and also the way that he's grown in the last 3, 4, however many years he's been in the NBA since getting in there and becoming one of the better rim protectors, one of the guys that really plays with a physical style and can stretch the floor too offensively, and is a role partner for Hallie. So they've got good weapons offensively, and that's something that we did not see in the Miami series. It was Tyler Hero and one army. This is not just Haliburton and one army. They have a number of guys who are capable.
Right, and that's why I kind of question what the Cavs' strategy is going to be like defensively, because we saw them do one thing or I guess, multiple things, but we saw them do something in games 1 and 2 that for the most part worked. And on Hero specifically, I thought that until game 4, it felt like Tyler hit every easy shot that he had. And then in game 4, he didn't, but he didn't get very many easy shots. And I think that was something the Cavs could do because Miami just didn't have that depth of ball handling that I think the Pacers do have. And I wonder what their defensive strategy on Tyrese Haliburton is going to be. I think he's a much harder, and I have talked on this show a lot over the last week about top locking, which basically denying the basketball to somebody. That's hard to do with Tyrese Haliburton because of how frequently he brings the basketball up. But I wonder, Spencer, if we're going to see a lot of the same, 94 feet of pressure that the Cavs used against the Heat against the Pacers in this series.
I'm gonna just think right off the bat when you talk about just one-on-one matchups, I see Max Strus, I see someone like Dean Wade, Isaac Okoro. You're going to probably see Evan and Jared on him at some point because the Pacers will try to match up Hunt, and that's just the name of the game in the postseason. I feel like they have to make him uncomfortable. He cannot just come waltzing up the floor and get into the actions that he wants to get into, because that's when the Pacers are dangerous. And he's job of taking care of the ball this season. When he was struggling, it was because of the back issue earlier in the year, and that might have obviously kind of come off the Olympics that you were talking about earlier, but he's really locked in at taking care of the basketball. Andrew Nembhard, someone that takes care of the basketball. I think that when they go to him or when they need him, TJ McConnell is very reliable on both ends of the floor, but in terms of just setting guys up and using that little dribble that goes around to the baseline and then executing a 10-foot turnaround jumper that everyone will see as a nuisance, I guarantee, in this series. So you have that. I think Ben Mathurin is someone off the bench that really gives them a lot too in terms of scoring. So I think their depth, again, going back to the Heat series, is something that the Cavs have not seen to this point yet in the playoffs this year. So that's going to be an adjustment for them. But I'm with you. I think that their overall roster of talent is better than Indiana's, and that's going to be big. But at the same time, if you want to play devil's advocate, the Pacers have been to the Eastern Conference Finals. The Cavaliers, this version, has not been.
I want to talk about whether or not that matters in this series, and we're going to do that next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show brought to you by Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to go. Dive into hundreds of premium titles, including EA Sports College Football 25. That is my personal favorite. I played it earlier today. As easily as you stream your favorite show. Maybe you're going to be on the road a bunch. I personally going to Indiana next week. I'll be in Indianapolis for like 4 days because of this series, maybe longer if it goes to game 6. How am I going to be able to play? Well, I think I just told you how I'm going to be able to play because it's difficult to pack that console up, right? Well, this makes it so much easier. So head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. That is Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K second generation, Fire TV Stick 4K Max first and second generation, and Fire TV Cube third generation. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about the show. And Spencer, you mentioned the Pacers going to the conference finals last year. So let's kind of talk about how they got there, because just like this year, they faced the Milwaukee Bucks in the first round. That Milwaukee Bucks team didn't have Giannis, I believe, for the entire series. I don't think he played in the playoffs last year. And they won that series in 6 games. A different Bucks team, still nice win. Then they beat the New York Knicks in 7 games. The Knicks were running on fumes by that point, and they were able to get past New York, and then they lost to the Boston Celtics in 4 games, 4 close games, but it was a sweep. So they've got postseason experience. How much does that matter in this series, do you think?
I just think being on the stage and knowing what to expect in terms of the mental more than the actual talent is where that comes into play. And I think that's where the Cavs have not been. They obviously have not been past the second round with this iteration of the team. And you have a couple of guys who have been. You have Max Strus, who's been to the mountaintop, to the finals. You've had Tristan Thompson there, but Tristan isn't a part of this rotation. So that is probably
Excuse you, Sam Merrill is an NBA champion too, Spencer.
He is.
How dare you forget that?
That's a good point. Forgot about that one.
That's why I
Milwaukee,
made it.
Correct? Yeah, Milwaukee.
As a rookie.
There you go. All right, so
really, Milwaukee went bad when Sam Merrill left. It's not the Haslams bought the team. It's not the Dame trade being a colossal mistake. It's they let Sam Merrill go, and they've not been the same since.
It very much could be it. Who knows? Who knows?
I'm just saying, man.
But yeah, I mean, I think incrementally the Cavs have taken steps since they've gotten this whole iteration of the team together. And the next logical step is to get to the conference finals. But I don't think you necessarily always have to fail to get to the top. I don't know the track records of a lot of the teams who have. Like the Raptors, for example, won a championship, and I don't think they've had that experience like with that version of the team. You know, you look at Milwaukee, same way. Like they didn't have to get to the Eastern Conference Finals to fail and then win a championship. Like,
Yes, they did.
but
In 2019, they were up 2-0 in the conference finals over the Raptors and lost the next 4. Like you do kind of go through that,
Okay.
but I think that
Okay.
the point you're
Okay.
making is that like, are the Cavs going to win this series because they lost last year? No, I don't think that the Pacers have an advantage here because they made the conference finals last year. Like, I think, does that stuff matter? Sure, but ultimately, I think the Cavs are a much better team than Indy, and I just think that kind of how much that matters is the interesting discussion here.
Yeah, for sure. And my apologies. The COVID years just really kind of go
Unacceptable,
in
man.
and out.
Absolutely unacceptable.
Yeah, but there is definitely a rite of passage for sure. But the thing is too, like just like when you get there, doesn't mean you always get back there too. I think the Cavs know what their goal is and have known what their goal is. And I think the unfinished business is a huge part of this. And you have new leadership, you have more mature versions of Darius Garland and Evan Mobley in terms of both them in play, but also, and again, in mind. I'm thinking more the mental side of all of this in terms of the bigger the stage gets, the brighter the lights get, if you want to use the, the Jared Allen stuff. And I feel like they're ready for it. And it's just a feeling. I have no like empirical evidence to back that up, but I feel like they're ready for it. And the way that they've approached this and the way that they've kind of responded, you can look at Donovan Mitchell's kind of way that he looks at it, where they always respond to their failures. And you can look at that as a whole for this season. You can look at it probably as a whole for this playoffs and how they fight back. They get back up. They don't just kind of follow the same stuff that doesn't work and then, hold their hands up. Like they have a legitimate mindset that I think that could also, and you include that with the talent and what they're able to do and how often they've been able to do it as seamlessly as they've been able to do it. I think that's a good combination. Maybe I'm just spitting, but
no, I think the mindset is a good point. Because like, listen, the Cavs were always going to win that series over the Heat, right? Like Miami's just not that good. But the thing that stands out is how big of a series victory that was, that they won that series by 122 points, that they go to Miami for games 3 and 4 and win those games by a combined 92 points. Does some of that talk to the Heat just not being good? Yeah, like that's part of that. But I also think part of it, Spencer, is the Cavs have a level of focus that I think is really important and necessary to win a title. And the biggest thing I take away from the first round and going into the second round is just that, is that level of focus that the Cavs have already displayed in the postseason. And if I'm watching the Pacers series against the Bucks, and again, not all of this is 100% certain, and the Pacers faced a better first-round opponent in Milwaukee, who I still don't think was very good, but they are without question better than the Miami Heat. But the Pacers didn't have that same consistent level of focus that I think the Cavs had for the most part in that series. The Cavs had, I thought, one bad quarter that Donovan Mitchell rescued them from in game 2. Other than that, the Cavs had a pristine sense of focus. And I think that, to me, is one of the biggest signs that, okay, the Cavs haven't been to the conference finals before in this group. But I think that they've shown a level of focus that I think is a very rare thing. And I think is a true championship quality. And I think that's one of the biggest upsides that they have going into the series, because I don't know that I saw that from Indiana in the first round.
Is it okay to like even look at the regular season and look at that Knicks win in New York?
The last week of the season for the Cavs?
Yeah.
I think so. I do
I
think so,
that
yes.
also kind of supports your point. It's like you're playing because you want to win, and you want to win the right way, and you ultimately want the Larry O'Brien. That's what they want. They are legitimately looking at that as the one goal. And they have been since training camp. And Donovan's been talking about it. DG's been talking about it. Evan has been talking about it consistently. And I think the more you speak it, the more that you can actually live it. And they are just a perfect example of speaking it into existence. And I think that their habits have carried them to this point, even through the couple losing streaks that they had, and just knowing what the main goal is has been really important to them. And I think with the Cavs, you look at the intensity on both ends for 48 minutes, as you said, the focus level, that's rare to find. It's rare to find. And I think there's a huge chip on their shoulder too, because ultimately a lot of people believe it's just going to be Boston beating them in the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, the majority of people who are watching basketball right now are just consistently saying, all right, well, like, wait till they get to Boston, and then that's when they're going to end up folding. And I think the Cavs have that in the back of their mind too. So they do have something to prove, even as the top seed in the East.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's a rare thing to be able to, one, win 64 games, but win 64 games and not even be the favorite to get out of your own conference. Like, it has happened before. For instance, the San Antonio Spurs in 2016 won 67 games and no one gave them a chance. And they actually lost in the second round to an Oklahoma City Thunder team that was really, really good too. Certainly, I don't think that the Pacers rise to that level, but it has happened before, but it is a rarity. Now, I think that the Cavs have some advantages on the floor that are not a mindset thing, and I want to talk about those next right here on Locked On Cavs. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen or watch every single day. The show's available on YouTube. And if you're watching right now, do us a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for us. Click subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. Spencer, the Cavs are obviously, like, you don't get to where the Cavs are at without also being awesome at basketball, which, duh. But as you start to dive into this matchup, where do you think the Cavs have the biggest on-floor advantage?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think they're just a better version of what Indiana has. I mean, it sounds really basic, but like, I would take the Cavs bench over their bench, even though Indiana's bench is really talented. Like, we haven't even talked and mentioned about Obi Toppin having a good series for them. And you look at Jarris Walker as a guy who's probably going to get quite a few minutes in this series just because of the size difference, I think. For me, I think the Cavs just have overall more combined talent, if that makes sense. Like, Donovan Mitchell hasn't played to his best yet. I think that that's also an advantage for the Cavs. There's just a little bit more of a quickness. There's a little bit more of a sharpness to Cleveland. And I don't want to take away from Indiana, because they do. They had one of the better second halves of any team in the NBA. But I just think that the Cavs are just one step above them. And I don't know if it's just like this positional group or this stat is better than what Indiana does. I just think it's just a step above because they do a lot of things very similarly, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that the Cavs are, I don't know if I want to call them a better version of the Pacers, but they're better at everything. Like, they are a better offensive team than Indiana is. They're a better defensive team than Indiana is. And this isn't something throwing shade at the Pacers, because I think the Pacers are a really good team. I think they're the third best team in the East, behind the Cavs, behind Boston. If this would obviously not happen, but let's say the Cavs and Celtics didn't exist, I would pick the Pacers to beat New York in a series. I would. The only two teams I wouldn't take Indy to beat in a series in the East are the Cavs and Boston. Like, that is how good I think they are. But I don't know if the Pacers are going to have enough offensively to keep up with what the Cavs can do. And I think that we saw the Cavs defense really turn it on in a way that I don't know if concerned is the right word, skeptical maybe that they could in that series against Miami. And the Pacers offense is much better than the Heat's. But with what we saw from the Cavs in the regular season defensively, I didn't know if they were capable of holding a team below 90 points in back-to-back games in the playoffs. And I don't expect them to hold the Pacers below 90 points in back-to-back games in the series. But I do think if you look at some of the maybe the offensive struggles, like in that game against Milwaukee in game 5, obviously Indy goes on an 8-0 run in the final minutes of overtime to win that game. But what was the score at the end of regulation? Right? Like the Pacers were in that game because they couldn't score well enough. And the Bucks have their own problems, and that's not what this is about. But the Pacers offensively, I don't know if they're going to be able to get enough done. Like they scored 101 points in that game 3 that they lost. They scored 117, 123, 101, 129, 119 in overtime. Like this is not, it's a good offense, but it's not a great offense. And I do wonder, what are we going to see from the Cavs defense? And we saw Kenny Atkinson do different things, pull out different defensive strategies against the Heat. I don't know that those same defensive strategies will work against the Pacers, but I think seeing him make adjustments that worked to perfection against Miami gives me confidence that, okay, they're going to find something that slows down this Indiana offense. And I don't know that the Pacers have answers to slow down what the Cavs doing offensively. Do I expect Cleveland to have an offensive rating of 133 in this series against Indy? No. The Pacers are going to be better than the Heat were on that end of the floor. They're not going to let go of the rope the way the Heat did. But I just think ultimately the Cavs are better on both ends of the floor, and I think that's going to play out over this series.
And it depends too on, you said the strategy defensively, like they're going to put ball pressure on Hallie. That's my assumption. And then they're going to say, okay, Andrew Nembhard, you're the guy that has to be the engine to get this team going. Because Hallie doesn't do much off ball. And he's somebody that they'll have to stay in front of when Hallie does have the ball, because he's got an electric crossover. He's got the unique jump shot, the toe tap back, step back. That's really nice. Pascal, we know he's going to have the left shoulder turnaround almost every time on the block. That's his go-to move. I'm looking at, the Aaron Nesmiths of the world. If they can make shots, that's going to be something that's key for the Pacers. And going back to the bench, you look again at the Benedict Mathurin's, Obi Toppin, the guys that really will have to step up for them, because the Cavs will do everything in their power to try to take away Haliburton from being the number one option. And Aaron Nesmith's going to probably have to be that number one guy. Now, conversely, the Cavs are going to have to do the same thing, but do they have somebody who's going to be able to stick with Evan Mobley when he drives a closeout after a pump fake? Do they have someone who, you know what I'm saying? Like, the Cavs have so many different weapons. Like, what if Jerome, Garland, and Mitchell are on the floor again like they were in the Miami series? Like, do they have enough guys who can stay in front? Do they have enough guys who can contest quick enough before those quick releases get off and all of a sudden the Cavs are bombing threes from deep? Or setting up guys in the dunker spot, spraying out to the outside, because that's what the Cavs do, man. They move the ball so much, they really don't dribble a lot. And especially when they get in transition, they put you in a world of hurt with whatever options they have. So that's what I'm looking at. I'm also really intrigued by, Jared Allen, kind of the overly talked about unsung hero by me, I think. Just as a rim protector, because they're going to be doing a lot. If they're not doubling Hallie, then Hallie gets to the middle of the paint, and, Jay is going to be there to alter a shot. Evan Mobley is going to come from the weak side and force Hallie to give it up. But ultimately, like you said, talking about top locking, they get the ball out of his hands and make somebody else beat him. I think they have a good chance, but Andrew Nembhard's a lot more talented than I think a lot of people give him credit for. And he can shoot the heck out of the ball. I think his mid-range game is really nice, and he can get to the paint and also create. And that's what guys from Gonzaga do when they're in those spotlights, because they've been to very high stages. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the Cavs do when Nembhard is the maestro, and seeing how he can create and you can defend that.
So I think it's the one thing to take away from that series against Milwaukee when looking at Indiana is how they defend the three-point arc, right? Because the Bucks were a great three-point shooting team. Obviously, the Cavs were as well. I think they generate open three-pointers differently. During the regular season, the Pacers were 11th in opponent three-point attempts per game. They allowed 38 threes per game, which is a fine number in today's NBA. It's not great, but it's fine. They allowed that same number in the postseason, but the difference in the postseason is the pace at which the game is played. When you're allowing 38 threes in a game that is 102 possessions versus 38 threes that is a game 96 possessions, I think that is something to keep an eye on. Like that, those numbers are not created equal. 38 threes in the regular season, good. 38 threes allowed in the postseason, not great. And one of the things the Cavs did awesome against Miami was create threes. They took 43.8 threes, so 44 three-pointers per game in the 4 games against the Heat. And they shot 44%, which because they generated a ton of really good looks and they have a lot of good shooters. I don't know. And the Bucks shot 39.3% from deep in those 5 games. That's why they won one of them. That's why they almost won a second one. Not because they were good, because they generated a lot of threes and made threes. How the Pacers can slow down the Cavs, and I don't know if they can, but I think that the Cavs should be able to create a lot of open three-point looks in this series. And I think that's just should be a huge key for the Cavs offensively.
Well, they usually have Turner in a drop, don't they? So that's probably part of it. I know that Miles has switched a little bit, but I think because they have those guys out there, and Pascal is obviously out there on the perimeter defending as well, that's probably the reason. And they're not going to play too much on the perimeter. I think that Nesmith's going to be the big key, I think, here, because Nesmith is their primary lockdown guy, I would say, and Nembhard plays some good defense too. Like, so don't get me wrong in there, but the Cavs have so much talent and different ways to get to the rim. Like we talked about it all the time. DG is more of your side to side kind of trick you into getting to the rim type, whereas Donovan will go straight at somebody and get to the rim or get to the free throw line. Those are 2 different ways you can do it. Again, mentioning Evan Mobley driving closeouts now because he's stretching the floor. He can get into the paint as well, and he's really good also at passing out of those situations. J.A. is also a terrific playmaker out of the short roll. So they're not one-dimensional by any means. And I think that the other guys, so to speak, the Sam Merrills, the Max Struses, whoever's waiting on the perimeter, Ty Jerome, DeAndre Hunter, those guys can make you pay. And even if there's a hand in the face, those guys can make you pay. So that's the problem that everybody has facing the Cavs is, it's a pick your poison, as Donovan likes to put it a lot of the time.
Have you put forth a series prediction for this one yet, Spencer, or no?
I was going to just say Cavs in 6.
Okay, I think that's safe. I'm going to pick the Cavs. Like, listen, they're a 64-win team. I haven't decided on like a true prediction for number of games. That'll probably come from me later in the week, right here on this very show. But I was just kind of curious where you were at on things. But man, thank you for taking the time to do this. Always enjoy having you on. Where can everyone get your work at?
Yeah, you can follow me online. I'm at Spin Davies on Twitter and on Instagram. Also, please go to si.com/NBA/Cavaliers for our Cleveland Cavaliers on SI content. Also have a YouTube channel, Cleveland Cavaliers on SI. So be sure to subscribe, rate, comment, like. Also have a podcast called Courtside with Cavs on SI. Do the same thing that I just said. I also do work for RG Media, have work over at Babcock Hoops, which is NBA draft stuff. And then finally, I'm really excited about this one. Close Up 360, we have a project coming out called Wired to Win. It's looking at Isaac Okoro and Holo, his shoe, the first time that's ever been in a playoff environment. And we did some really good interviews with the co-founders of Holo. We talked to Isaac's parents, we talked to Isaac, and then his best friend, Steph, as well. So cannot wait for episode 1 to drop later this week. And we'll be having them come out throughout the playoffs, and we did a really good job. Shout out to Cam from Miami, did an amazing job at shooting the whole thing and just played a little part in it. So I'm really excited. So that's at Close Up 360, and that's also on YouTube and Twitter.
Well, after this postseason run is over, we will have to link back up, and I'm sure we'll talk on this show before then, but we'll have to link back up and have an episode kind of covering what that experience was like, because I'm certainly very interested in that, and I think a lot of Cavs fans will be too. But thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure our friends subscribe as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, as we get out of here, hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. I'll be back tomorrow talking more about the Cleveland Cavaliers.